Shabastai Gurule Gurudasa Jayadvaita Swami Tinamane Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deva Urvani Prachayane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyadya Deshatare Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakti Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajagacharya Astottara Satta Shishimad. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Privrajagacharya Astottara Satta Shishimad. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Chamunamai Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande.
Hari Bol. Thank you so much, Panchatattva Prabhu. And thank you everyone for being here for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends. It is Monday, November 20th, 2023. And we are reading tonight in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the third canto. And I'm guessing we are still in the 26th chapter, although I was absent for the last 2 or 3 classes. So someone else will have to say definitively where we're starting from tonight. But thank you all for being here, especially for Maharaj being here. Hare Krishna.
Mother Saraswati says it's 3:26:7. Shall we start there? Does that sound right to everyone? Is that? I think that's right. Six. Did we do 6 already? Okay. 3:26:7. Who would like to read? Anyone? All right. Well, I'll start out reading. Have to bear with me. I have some sort of allergy thing going on here. 3:26:7. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tadasya Sangsritir Bandha Paratantriyam Chatat Kritam Bhavadyatya Kartur Bhavatyakartur Ishasya Sakshino Nivritatmanaha. Translation. Material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life, in which conditions are enforced upon the living entity by the material energy. Although the spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental to such activities, he is thus affected by conditional life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Mayavadi philosopher, who does not differentiate between the Supreme Spirit and the individual spirit, says that the conditional existence of the living entity is his lila, or pastime. But the word pastime implies enjoyment in the activities of the Lord. The Mayavadis misuse the word and say that even if the living entity has become a stool-eating hog he is also enjoying his pastimes. This is a most dangerous interpretation. Actually, the Supreme Lord is the leader and maintainer of all living entities. His pastimes are transcendental to any material activity. Such pastimes of the Lord cannot be dragged to the level of the conditioned activities of the living entities. In conditional life, the living entity actually remains as if a captive in the hands of material energy. Whatever the material energy dictates, the conditioned soul does. He has no responsibility. He's simply the witness of the action. But he's forced to act in that way due to his offense in his eternal relationship with Krishna. Lord Krishna therefore says in Bhagavad Gita that Maya, his material energy, is so forceful that it is insurmountable. But if a living entity simply understands that his constitutional position is to serve Krishna, and he tries to act on this principle, then however conditioned he may be, the influence of Maya immediately vanishes. This is clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter. Krishna takes charge of anyone who surrenders to him in helplessness, and thus the influence of Maya, or conditional life, is removed. The spiritual soul is actually Satchid Ananda, eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. Under the clutches of Maya, however, he suffers from continued birth, death, disease, and old age. One has to be serious to cure this condition of material existence and transfer himself to Krishna consciousness. For thus, his long suffering may be mitigated without difficulty. In summary, the suffering of the conditioned soul is due to his attachment to material nature. This attachment should be thus transferred from matter to Krishna. Om Ajnantamandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurumanitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Material consciousness is the cause of one's conditional life, in which conditions are enforced upon the living entity by the material energy. Although the spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental to such activities, he is thus affected by conditional life. Daivi yesha gunamaye mama maya duratyaya mam eva ye prapadyante mayamitang tarantite. Maya is insurmountable. It's under Krishna's control. It's insurmountable. But Krishna says that whoever surrenders unto him can easily cross beyond it, can overcome that conditioned state, can be freed from it. The verse is describing how the spirit soul does not do anything and is transcendental. So how come the spirit soul is being forced this way and that way? Sometimes, as Arjuna says, even seemingly against his own will. And we understand here that it's Krishna's energy, it's Krishna's material energy. It's stated here as being insurmountable. Mama Maya Durachaya. The living entity has forgotten his real position as an eternal servant of Krishna. And this powerful material energy under Krishna's authority bewilders him and deludes him. He's conditioned by the three modes, even though he considers himself a big actor in the material world, a big controller. He's completely controlled. He's completely bound up. But Krishna promises that if you surrender to me, if you surrender to him as it's described here, in helplessness, Krishna takes charge, and you become free from the influence of Maya. Its influence is, quote unquote, removed. And then Prabhupada goes on in the purport to describe that the living entity, at least in quality, if not quantity, in quality is Satchidananda, eternal, full of bliss, and full of knowledge. But material energy is so powerful that this same Satchidananda entity is forced to undergo repeated birth, death, old age, and disease ultimately because of his rebellion against Krishna, because he wants to try to enjoy separately. It's actually impossible. That kind of so-called enjoyment is an impossibility. So the living entity has to be placed under illusion in order to even make such an attempt. In summary, the suffering of the conditioned soul is due to his attachment to material energy, material nature. That's the thing. Attachment takes place to the external energy, to trying to enjoy it. Our attachment for matter has to be transferred, or attachment to matter and the other products of matter needs to be transferred to Krishna. Then we'll be on the safe side. Here, actually, it says that this attachment should be thus transferred from matter to Krishna. It's a question of what we feel affection for, affinity for, where we look, what we concentrate on. A pure devotee is always meditating on Krishna. He's always thinking, he or she's always thinking about Krishna, how to please Krishna. Conditioned souls always obsessed with the material energy and its byproducts, his family attachments, his business prospects, and so on, and rarely gives a moment's thought to God. And if he does, it's some lip service. There's very little or no understanding, because as long as we're attached to material enjoyment, we can't even conceptualize the transcendental personality of Godhead. They're in two different realms of consciousness. We have to transfer from the material realm of consciousness to the spiritual realm. That's our mission in life if we want to be successful transcendentalists. Any comments, questions? Does anyone have something to offer?
I feel like nothing's left to be said.
Well, I clearly stumble along. Thank you for being so tolerant. Mother Saraswati says, Pranams, what does it mean in the text? He has no responsibility. He's simply the witness of the action. All jivas have responsibility for themselves. And if they're only a witness, then they wouldn't be embroiled in the karmic reaction. They're not just victims. As I understand it, here Srila Prabhupada's talking about the spirit soul. The spirit soul is not actually acting, and therefore he's not actually, the spirit soul is not material. It's just because of his misguided consciousness that he has to assume so many responsibilities. The pure soul actually has no responsibility for the goings-on of the material nature. It's entirely separate from it. But because he's under the influence of the modes of nature and the living entity is trying to enjoy that material nature, he has to assume so much responsibility, as you've correctly pointed out. But in his pure state, he has nothing to do with the material energy. We don't come here by our own will. It's stated in the next verse. Krishna comes of his own will. We don't. Well, in one sense, ultimately, we make that decision. But once that decision is made to enjoy separately from Krishna, we're under the control of the modes of nature. We may think we're under less control because we have some prominence of the mode of goodness, or more severely restricted because of prominence of the mode of ignorance, but we're under control nonetheless. But the living entity in its pure state has nothing to do with material energy or its goings on. Anyone else? Anyone else like to offer something? That's a very good question. In response to Saraswati's question, Maharaj says, see the first line of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's purport. Does anyone have that in front of them? I might be able to get that. Would anyone have that available?
I'm sorry, I don't right now.
I can pull it up. Would someone else like to read what else is there in terms of, Maharaj has posted it. The conception of being the doer by the jiva, asya, who actually is not the doer, since he is only a witness, becomes his bondage. The conception of being the doer by the jiva, who's actually not the doer, since he's only a witness, becomes his bondage. So as soon as I think, I'm the doer, I'm the controller, this is mine, I will have my way with this and this and this in the material world, and we're bound. Mother Tulsi Priya has her hand up.
Hi, Krishna. Yeah, I wrote in the chat that karmic reactions are also part of the illusion, are also illusory, as is our conception of being the doer. So if you think you're the doer, then the reactions are also yours to, quote unquote, enjoy. And I think Prabhupada has used that word enjoy to refer to both good and bad reactions. I can't remember the exact reference. Perhaps Maharaj remembers exactly. I could look it up. But when you think you're the doer, then everything is yours, to accept the responsibility for. But it's still part of the illusion. If the illusion is being the doer, then so also are the reactions to that. But they certainly feel real.
Anyone else? I'm reminded of that purport from Caitanya-caritamrta where Prabhupada's talking about he's commenting on a verse where Lord Chaitanya is describing how he don't think that I'm chanting as I will it, etc., etc. I'm doing this automatically, etc. And Prabhupada talks about how he began the movement in humbleness, in helplessness. So that's a valued mood to have in Krishna consciousness, completely dependent upon the mercy of the spiritual master in Krishna. And therefore it is said here, Krishna takes charge of anyone who surrenders to him in helplessness. Thus, the influence of Maya or conditional life is removed. Not that Srila Prabhupada was conditioned in any way, but that mood is necessary for someone who wants to approach Krishna in devotional service. Okay, what else do we have here? Morai Gupta says, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Much of Bhagavad Gita is about acting and the consequences of our actions. How are we to understand this when Krishna says that we are controlled all the time and cannot actually do anything? Yes, there's control, but at the same time, by the influence of the Lord's internal potency via a devotee, a pure devotee, the living entity can start to snap out of it. There is minute independence, however minute it may be. It makes a big difference when it's utilized in Krishna service. Then all the things that have been causes of our bondage, if used in Krishna service, can become causes of our liberation from the modes. Anyone else like to answer that question? Maharaj says, regarding Saraswati and Murari, asango yaham purusha. It's a reference that's mentioned here in the purport 331.14. Prabhupada says, asango hiyayam purusha, the living entity is liberated. His material contamination is temporary, and his actual position is that he is liberated. This liberation is achieved by Krishna consciousness, which begins from the point of surrender. Anyone else? Tulsipriya, can we say that it's our desire we have control over? Even that. Some control, maybe.
I mean to say that if we want Krishna, then Krishna will move to, fulfill our desire to the degree that we desire it. And if we desire Maya, then the material energy, its super soul gives us the intelligence to fulfill our material desires.
Yeah. But how to purify our desires? That's the thing. It keeps making me hearken back to the fact that the jivas are so bound up that it's almost you almost have to, there has to be some intervention or some happy coincidence of meeting devotees or doing something even unknowingly connected to devotional service, because I can tell you quite honestly, until I met the devotees, and even now what to speak, but anyway, till I met the devotees, there was no question of a spiritual desire, a desire for spiritual life, a desire to serve a pure devotee or Krishna was like, that wasn't in my wheelhouse. It wasn't happening at all. At least, sure didn't feel like it. Morai Gupta has his hand raised. Would you like to say something?
Yeah. As a society, we recognize devotees who achieve great things in preaching or temple construction or book production and distribution. and we condemn devotees that cause havoc or fall down in very unfortunate ways. So if the activities are under the control of material nature and not under the control of the individual, what are we actually doing in these situations?
Well, there's the control of the material energy, and then there's the soul taking shelter of Guru and Krishna. In that position, Krishna is the controller of because he's engaged in devotional service. Regarding condemning devotees who cause havoc and so forth, it's not exactly like that, I don't think. I mean, even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna takes pains to point out that a person who becomes fallen on the path of devotional service, if he's still determined somehow or other to rectify himself or herself and wants to become remain fixed in devotional service, they're not to be condemned. I understand your point. The point is well taken, of course. But I hesitate to say that we condemn persons in the movement because they make mistakes or even if they cause havoc. We want them to be rectified, and it really is judged on an individual basis. Maharaj says, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. The bull didn't even want to point towards Kali as the source of his troubles because the bull knew, quote, the intricacies of religious principles. Yeah, we in Kali Yuga, we're really expert at finger pointing. It doesn't mean that this is our Hare Krishna society shouldn't be regulated and protected from persons who do ill. But the psychology of a devotee is such that he doesn't say, this one's my friend and this one's my enemy. Prahlad Maharaj condemns that consciousness, friend and enemy consciousness. That's what he condemns. He doesn't, we're required as devotees to try to live according to Trinada Pisanichena Torari Vasahishnana. Again, that doesn't mean that we tolerate harm to other devotees, grievous actions by persons who cause havoc, as stated by Murari Gupta. Things have to be done about that. But at the same time, we have to be careful not to always be pointing the finger. Krishna consciousness is a great undertaking. And the vast majority of our efforts have to be looking inward at, what am I doing? What have I done? How do I rectify myself? How do I root out all these gross and subtle material desires, including those for profit, adoration, and distinction, which oftentimes are enjoyed as a result of pushing others down. So Maharaj says, behind everything is Krishna and his energy. Yeah, there's the Krishna factor at every turn. Saraswati says, it is said, walking the path of bhakti can be like walking a razor's edge. But if we take shelter of the internal energy, how can Maya still have control over the jiva? Is it because full surrender didn't take place, so the jiva is still influenced by Maya? Yeah, there's some, until one comes to the platform of pure devotional service, there's something there. You may be 75% Krishna conscious, but still that 25% is there. So we work on that till we become purified. Or I should say, we work on it pleading for Krishna's mercy. So that will become purified. Ultimately, it's by Krishna's mercy that we become purified. But Krishna wants to see the effort. Any other comments? Murari Gupta Prabhu has his hand up. Would you like to say something, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Just, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. You sound fine.
On issues like Ritwik or female Diksha gurus, if it's not our position to make a decision, should we just not involve ourselves in it and just say, well, that's not for me. I feel one is right, one is not right, but others in the society have the job of making these decisions, and I shouldn't take a side. I'll just carry on with my own spiritual life.
Again, we have to be really concerned about our own spiritual development. It doesn't mean that, we just go along with any crazy thing that's happening in the movement and say, and disregard it. But, the best way to approach these things is under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. I remember one devotee, I won't mention his name, a very nice devotee. He was really really expert at bringing people to Krishna consciousness. And he told me that after some time in the training of these devotees, he has to sit them down and give them the talk. The talk being, okay, there's this wing of devotees who think this way, there's this wing of devotees who feel that way, He would explain Ritvikism and so forth, and how to understand the fact that it's not actually bona fide. It's a concoction, and what were some of the influences that caused that to come about in our society and so forth. So there's that. There's guidance from advanced Vaishnavas. That guidance is very valuable because then you don't have to go around thinking, well, maybe this, maybe that. You get a spiritual education to recognize what's good for your spiritual life and what's bad, what should be accepted and what should be avoided or rejected. That would be my best advice. Does anyone else have something to say about it? That's a good question. Was that all right, Murari Gupta Prabhu? What do you think? How would you answer your question?
Well, it's a problem for me because I meet people online, and many of them are Ritwiks, and they're sincere in their Krishna consciousness. They just started on the wrong foot.
Yeah.
And that was what they first came up with. And I don't want to pop their bubble because they have an idea of Krishna consciousness and they want to pursue it. And it's, there's a lot of good things that they're doing, but at the same time, I don't accept Ritwik as a valid path, but I feel, what can I do? It's in Krishna's hands, and give them encouragement to read Prabhupada's books and chant and serve whoever Ritwixen or whatever their arrangement is. I don't really know, but I don't want to take the position of I do feel they're wrong, that they're completely wrong, but I don't want to tell them that and take the position of possibly destroying what little they have. And
Yeah,
the same thing with female dikshas.
you may
Yeah,
consider that um, spending time going around and round with persons who aren't going to change their mind no matter what you say might be a waste of time, and especially on the internet. I remember years ago, I would do that back and forth with people about this issue or that issue, and eventually, finally, after a lot of wasted effort, came to realize that I'm not going to change their minds this way. I've got to get on with my own Krishna consciousness. You know,
yeah.
that's the thing. And then you have to see who is concentrating on the good qualities of others and who is not. If your association uplifts you because they're seeing the good in others, then you've got good association. If your association is causing you to see every flaw in every other Vaishnava, you've got really bad association. So even if I'll speak for myself here, even if I think that I'm going to be able to benefit this person by repeatedly confronting them about their own mistaken ideas, I'm still exposing myself again and again and again to not only their mistaken ideas, but what may be very polluting, their criticism, their criticizing mood, their envy of others, their resentments. That's a lot of bad energy coming your way if you're trying to practice Krishna consciousness. It's best to avoid it.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. That's very helpful advice.
Thank you, Prabhu. Does anyone else have something to offer? Should we go to let's see. Is there anything else in the chat? Tulsi Priya asks, is it your service to get involved in controversies? If yes, then get involved. If not, it's probably just a matter of prajalpa, a word that may have gone out of vogue in ISKCON in the internet age. Yeah. Saraswati says, conditional souls running from suffering want utopia, but Srila Prabhupada said there's no such thing or place. And that's what Mayavadis desire. What does that mean? Because spiritual world looks like utopia. Well, there's certainly no utopia in the material world, if that's what you mean. That doesn't mean that there isn't a transcendental realm which is free from the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, where every word is a song, every step is a dance, and every day is a festival. Glorifying the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, you could call it a utopia. It's better than utopia. It's a reality, and we are living in a dim reflection of it in the material world, or as Prabhupada would say, perverted reflection. Maharaj says to Murari Gupta Prabhu, it's a tactical question. When someone has faith in your words, then you can say something. Yeah, that's a really good point. If you want to address these issues with the person, if they have any real respect for your words, for your knowledge, for your understanding, then it may be worth your while. But if they're just looking for someone to punch at, it's not going to do any good. Sometimes it works. I'll give a quick example. There's a devotee, wonderful devotee, lives in Mayapur. His name is Prabhupada Das. He took initiation from Gunagrahi Swami. When he first came to the movement, he didn't come, when he first encountered the devotees, I should say, he was just a street tough, full of false ego and full of meanness. And, he would see the devotees and yell at them, go across the other side of the street, say mean things to them like that. He encountered a tall, imposing Vaishnava whose name I don't remember, who was distributing books, and he was being rude to him. And the devotee just looked down at him and said, "You're just a punk," and turned around and walked away. And the future Prabhupada Das thought to himself and said, "My God, he's right. I'm just a punk." And he started looking for that devotee who had already disappeared into a crowd. It took him hours to find him. He ended up joining. He joined the temple. He became this wonderful devotee who lives in Mayapur today. So sometimes, by Krishna's grace, our words can have an effect even on a hardened heart. But in general, especially when devotees have, disastrously wayward doctrines that have been built basically on disappointment and envy, it's probably better to avoid them, unless, as Tulsi Priya said, it's your service to deal with, apostasy or something like that. Anyone else? Who would like to read the next verse? Text number 8. Marai Gupta, you sound good today. Would you like to read the next verse?
I can't sit up.
Okay. All right. That's fine. My apologies. Nice to see you. Hare Krishna. Haribol.
Material nature not cooperating at the moment.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj has his hand up. Gurudev? Maharaj says to everyone, utopia is originally, quote unquote, quote, an imaginary island depicted by Sir Thomas More as enjoying a perfect social, legal, and political system, unquote. So utopia is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. Yeah. In other words, utopia is an imagination within the material world. Who's going to read? Tulsi Priya, would you like to read the next verse or not?
I'm sorry, I don't have the text up. I'm listening, but
Okay.
my hands
Okay.
are occupied.
Very good. Anybody?
I can read. Yeah,
Saras?
I can read.
Okay, Priyanka, please do. Text 8.
Yes. कार्ये कारण कर्तृत्वे कारणं प्रकृतिं विदुः भोक्तृत्वे सुख दुःखानां पुरुषं प्रकृते param. The cause of the conditioned soul's material body and senses, and the senses presiding deities, the demigods, is the material nature. This is understood by learned men. The feeling of happiness and distress of the soul, who is transcendental by nature, are caused by the spirit soul himself. Purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that when the Lord descends to this material world, he comes as a person by his own energy, Atma Maya. He is not forced by any superior energy. He comes by his own will, and this can be called his pastime or lila. But here it is clearly stated that the conditioned soul is forced to take a certain type of body and senses under the three modes of material nature. That body is not received according to his own choice. In other words, a conditioned soul has no free choice. He has to accept a certain type of body according to his karma. But when there are bodily reactions as felt in happiness and distress, it is to be understood that the cause is the spirit soul himself. If he so desires, the spirit soul can change this conditional life of dualities by choosing to serve Krishna. The living entity is the cause of his own suffering, but he can also be the cause of his eternal happiness. When he wants to engage in Krishna consciousness, a suitable body is offered to him by the internal potency, the spiritual energy of the Lord. And when he wants to satisfy his senses, a material body is offered. Thus, it is his free choice to accept a spiritual body or a material body. But once a body is accepted, he has to enjoy or suffer the consequences. The Mayavadi philosopher's presentation is that the living entity enjoys his pastimes by accepting the body of a hog. This theory is not acceptable, however, because the word pastime implies voluntary acceptance for enjoyment. Therefore, this interpretation is most misleading. When there is enforced acceptance for suffering, it is not a pastime. The Lord's pastimes and the conditioned living entity's acceptance of karmic reaction are not on the same level.
Would you like to say something about what you just read?
One thing that comes to my mind is when we say that the pure devotee's body is not material, but it is spiritual. So, when our intelligence is engaged in Krishna's service, even this material body can be spiritualized by the internal potency of the Lord. Everything around us can be spiritualized. Because Krishna is pure, so everything that it comes in touch with Krishna also becomes pure. So we don't even have to wait for the next body to have a next body as a spiritual body. But in this life itself, we can have the spiritual body to serve Krishna by engaging in Krishna's devotional service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Spiritualized body. Yeah, I don't know if I can. Well, it's not an uncountable number of times, but often over the years I've heard, well, it's Krishna's Leela, what I'm doing, it's just Krishna's pastimes. I'm part of Krishna's dream. Krishna's dreaming, and I'm, that whole idea is being rejected here. Pastimes. It's Krishna's Leela. It's Krishna's pastime. Pastime implies voluntary acceptance for enjoyment. This is an interesting, it's a very interesting purport because Prabhupada's, both in the translation, in the Sanskrit, and in Prabhupada's purport, this spirit soul has to accept responsibility for his own happiness and distress. It's being caused by the spirit soul himself. Would anybody like to elaborate on that? Yeah, Mara says, Caitanya-caritamrta in Bhagavad Gita. Anyone? We have to accept the responsibility. We've come here ultimately of our own choice. And we continue to make decisions both beneficial and unbeneficial for us. As long as we're in conditional life, we're making decisions which are ultimately unbeneficial for us and suffering accordingly. Sometimes it's argued that God is so unfair. Why does he allow a world in which, some unfortunate child has to suffer or some innocent person is killed? But all of this is going on because of our own blunder, our own desire to enjoy separately from Krishna. The whole thing is rolling along on the basis of our continued determination to enjoy separately. Interestingly, Maharaj says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur glosses Purusha as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So our happiness and distress depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we can't even enjoy or suffer without the mercy of the Personality of Godhead, even in material life.
Well, since Krishna is the master of the senses, then if we're trying to enjoy our senses, we can't do it without everything is done through Krishna's senses first. Nothing is seen unless Krishna sees it. Nothing is tasted unless Krishna tastes it.
Yeah, that's a really good meditation for a devotee too. If I do like this with my senses, will Krishna be pleased? Maharaj says, otherwise here Srila Prabhupada takes Purusha as the living being. The living being is responsible for his happiness and distress because of how he uses or misuses his independence. Yeah, the classic example is in the material world, if you misuse your independence, you end up in the jail. If you use it properly, then you're free. You don't have to live in the jail in the confines and restricted spaces of bars and guards and wardens and jangling keys. You can live in the free space. So we're like that. We're confined. And our different bodies are relative strictures, are relative confinements. And we go from one confinement to another. I think we've run out of time. Who would like to lead? Is that it? Is everyone satisfied? Sorry to have, again, found myself speaking more than anyone else. Hare Krishna. Would anyone like to lead the Krishna Konteya? Would you like to lead the closing kirtan?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai.
Want to say the Prema Dwani prayers, Prabhu?
Yes. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmsa Parivraj Jagacharya Stutar Sat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Brahmsa Parivraj Jagacharya Astotar Sat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Das Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON founder Acharya Savior of the world, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Govinda Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Brihad Madanga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Guranga. Jai Guru Das Maharaj Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Krishna Kanteya Prabhu, and thank you very much, Panchatattva Prabhu, for all your commentary and reading. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami and friends Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. Haribol.
Haribol. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you.